Hey guys, so today we're moving on from where the North and South, how they were divided economically, population wise, technology wise, and seeing how that really led to the Civil War, the bloodiest war in American history. So you had these two places, one where slavery was okay and one where slavery was against the law. Oh, okay in the South is meaning that it was okay under the law. So all these red states down here, these are all slave states, and the green ones up here were where there were no slaves. So every time that the United States would gain new land, there would be a disagreement as to whether that land could have slaves or whether it couldn't have slaves. So the first one was called the Missouri Compromise, and here's Missouri right here. And Missouri was admitted as a slave state, but only under the condition that everything else up here was not going to have slavery ever. So the abolitionists in the North, they said, okay, you can have Missouri as long as we are clear that nothing up here is ever going to have slavery. So making sure that they're keeping that balance even. The next one happened when we got more territories, such as Texas and California and them. And that happened in 1850. Remember, the Texas War for Independence was 1836, and we beat the Mexicans in the Mexican-American War in 1848. So this is because of those territories. So you had now Texas became a slave state, but California became a free state, and they made sure that Oregon was also going to be a free state. They also said that these two, Utah and New Mexico, they could decide for themselves. So this is still showing that same pattern of every time land is added, there's conflict over whether there should be slaves in that state or no slaves. The last one was the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. And in that act, they decided to let Kansas vote on whether it wanted slavery or not. This turned into a huge issue because now you had abolitionists who were going to Kansas and people who wanted slavery who were going to Kansas to try to get people to vote. Not only were they going there, but they were bringing weapons and starting conflict. So hundreds and hundreds of people were dying because these groups were fighting against each other, and people called it Bleeding Kansas because they were fighting over whether there should be slavery or not. And this is actually where John Brown made his name. Here's John Brown right here, and he was an anti-slavery crusader. He said, "The crimes of this guilty land will never be purged but with blood." So he starts in Kansas. He started violently acting there against people who wanted slavery. And then later he does his raid on Harper's Ferry, where he tries to start the slave revolution and is eventually hanged for doing that. But already you can see tension between the North and the South and actual fighting over whether there should be slavery or not. So there were other issues too. For example, the North passed a law, or the United States government passed a law called the Tariff of 1832. And in that tariff, it helped out manufacturing or factories, and it really hurt agriculture, made it more difficult to make money farming. So the South over here was kind of mad that laws had been made that helped out the North and made them poorer because they felt like the North was destroying their way of life. So there were more people in the North, and this led to a bunch of things happening. Because there were more people up there, they had more population. More population means that there are more votes. And because there were more votes in the North, that meant that they could pass laws that the South doesn't like the Tariff of 1832, like laws about where there can be slavery and where there cannot be slavery. And so the South really doesn't have any choice, right? What can they do? They can disobey the law, they could leave, they could just be mad. So they're kind of backed into a corner because the North is passing laws that they don't like because the North has more people than them. So then the final straw happened in 1860. Remember, more population means more electoral college points, and the North is where there was more population. California and Oregon were kind of included in the North, but they were pretty separate. So you had all these states up here, like look at New York, 35, Pennsylvania, 27, Ohio, 23, right? These are huge population states compared to any state in the South where you've got 4, 6, 4, 7, 9, right? Those are small states compared to what was going on in Pennsylvania and New York. So who won this election? Abraham Lincoln with the red, and Breckinridge was the blue. Abraham Lincoln clearly won because he won all those northern states, and the North got to elect its president. So, but Lincoln and his party was the Republican Party. They didn't support slavery. So he said, this is a direct quote, he said, "The system of slavery is a dirty stain on the human race. I will not support the expansion of slavery in the United States." So, how do you think the South felt about Lincoln and about the Republicans? Right, they were angry, they were mad. They thought that Lincoln and the Republicans were threatening their way of life and trying to change the way that they were living. So they decided to do the most radical thing that they could do. And because Lincoln was elected president, because they knew that he was going to try to abolish slavery, the South secedes, or another word for secede is quit. So they tried to make their own country. They tried to quit the United States and turn into their own country. So first, you had only a few states that did it right here, just the ones in blue. They were the first ones to secede. And then they actually had an army that they used to attack a place called Fort Sumter. And that was really the first battle of the Civil War and the Confederates won. They beat Fort Sumter, they took it over, and then as soon as that happened, then Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia all joined those southern states and seceded from the Union. And then you had these states here, Missouri, Kentucky, and Maryland, and Delaware, which were in the middle. That didn't really happen. But then all these ones up in here, these were the northern states. They had their own country still. So this really divided the country into two groups. You had the Confederate States, or the South, who was fighting for their way of life, for their system of slavery, for their ability to make laws for themselves, instead of having the North, which had more people, make laws because they had more votes, so they could do what they want. But that split the country in two, and they're going to fight against each other in the bloodiest war in American history, which we will talk about tomorrow, is called the Civil War.